The stories of the Doom timeline mostly follow the events of the Doomslayer and his mission to rip and tear his way right through hell itself. However, there were other stories out there in the universe that were just as tragic. Tales of creation, betrayal, and eventually destruction. Many light years away from Earth, there was the planet of Argent, and they, just like planet Earth, worshipped a higher power. In return, they received gifts, purpose, and knowledge. Throughout the different variations of the Doom timeline, there have been different variants of the creatures known as Wraiths. One was a demon that had the ability to teleport at will to assassinate its prey. Another was merely an alternate name for a demonic nightmare imp that, once again, attempted to take down those it encountered. However, there was another type of Wraith that healed those around them, and as a result, were extremely important to the overall events of the main Doom timeline. What did the people of Argent worship? Where did these creatures come from? What power did they possess? And how does their story end? Here, we explore in the lore and story behind the legendary godlike Wraith species in the Doom series. Many years ago, the planet of Argent was nothing but an almost barren rock that floated in space. In this seemingly timeless state, the planet was hit by a giant shard that had travelled across space. Even now, no one knows where the spear came from or if it was planned to hit Argent, but upon impact, it tore through the core of the planet, pole to pole, and became a permanent fixture. This impact ripped apart the skies as thunder and cataclysmic earthquakes devoured the land. This was the arrival of the Elemental Wraith species. From the outside, it appeared that this giant object was merely a spear that had impacted the planet. However, inside, it was clear that this was actually a very advanced spaceship that had been designed by bright minds. Along the edges, cryochambers housed thousands of creatures and kept them alive as they slept during their long journey. These creatures would go on to be called by many names: the Wraith, the Firstborn, or just gods to name a few. From their appearance, the Wraith looked like an amalgamation of many separate species that would later be discovered on planet Earth. These tall life forms resembled almost a human face, horns, tentacles, crab-like legs, and enormous wings. The impact of the Wraith's ship, also known as the World Spear, had resulted in mass destruction to the surface of Argent. However, this powerful species had a job to do. Almost instantly, power emanated from the spear and mutated the plant life and vegetation around it into new life forms, stunning forests, and various other booming biomes. As this energy seeped into the environment, the Wraith woke from their slumber and left the ship. In waves, the creatures flew across the planet and looked at what Argent could be. The Wraith emanated the same remarkable power the World Spear did, and their breath restored the damaged land. As the forest flourished, the skies settled, the oceans welcomed new life, and this once inhospitable planet became home to life. Over time, their Wraith call echoed and continued to echo across the land, from the frozen continents to the sizzling deserts. This was essentially a new world, and with it came the first dominant species, now known as the Ancestrals. These creatures had lived through Argent period of desolation as it became a flourishing land, and as such, had adapted quickly. They had, in a sense, been born and invigorated with the magic of the Wraith, and they reflected this. The Ancestrals grew exponentially and, as most species do in their early years, attempted to gain dominance and territory, so they attacked the other creatures born from the land. For years, wars between these large, feral beasts tore apart the mountains and valleys that the Wraith had brought back to life. Of course, the Wraith were sentient and understood that these animals did not understand the work they had put into the reconstruction of the planet, but this was not what they had planned for Argenta. Regardless, they did not intervene directly. This was how life started on most planets. They just had to wait for an intelligent species to emerge. For an unknown amount of time, the Wraith call continued to echo across the planet as more life formed. Then, in the dry, grassy plains of Argenta, the first Argenta rose. This seed of intelligent life grew, and over the years, they studied their environment, farmed the plains for food, and most importantly, learned to avoid the constant ancestral war around them. This was what the Wraith had waited for. As the first of the Argenta people grew and adapted to survive in a war zone of towering ancestrals, they learned how to construct swords of steel strong enough to cut through flesh and pierce bone. In their mountain forges, they beat steel in the darkness as they prepared to form armies for both defense and offensive maneuvers. Through practice and study of their world, they taught their younger members of the ancestrals and the hold they had over Argenta. To live in peace, they needed to remove these creatures, so they continued to train, and eventually, the Wraith made themselves known to the Argenta. This formed a new era, the time of man. As godlike beings with incredible powers, the Wraith blessed the Argenta with their divine power and taught them some of their magics and abilities. In return, the Argenta worshipped the Wraith as their gods. Over countless years and wars, the armies of Argenta went out into the world armed with their swords, shields, armor, and power of the Wraith. With this incredible power, these armies fought with and drove back the divine beasts into the bleak valleys, far away from civilization. During these tough times, sentinel shamans of the tribes of Argenta approached the World Spear and discovered that the entrance was guarded by entities known as the Gatekeepers. These silent spirits watched over the entrance and judged those who approached. These had existed ever since the spear had crashed into the planet. For those deemed worthy, they were offered a piece of the spear, a crystal of immense power. When brought back to their communities, this energy source allowed them to advance their technological developments immensely. However, for those deemed unworthy by the spirits, they were struck down. The Wraith had gifted the Argenta with a new way of life, and in return, they worshipped them and took care of the land. Over the years, the new dominant species of Argenta bred animals to help them farm the fertile lands, develop new contraptions and technologies, built towering cities, formed governments to manage and increase the growth of the many newly developed settlements across the planet, and even crowned their first king, King Omero, on the Obsidian throne. From the World Spear, the Wraith watched this growth and saw how this species cared for the land in comparison to the feral ancestrals that had sought only to dominate and destroy. To pay their respects to the firstborn, the Argentans constructed the Cathedral of Reflection, and inside, they formed the Order of Deg, a holy group of 3 priests who communed with the Wraith and relayed their wishes to the population. Over time, society grew and the sons and daughters of Argenta were offered 2 paths of duty to honor the Wraith: sword or alchemy. Their whole society was structured around the worship of the divine beings that had allowed them to fight against the terrifying ancestrals years before. However, although the majority of the population had joined this grand society, they still suffered hardships. The Wraith watched over the population from their spear and offered them blessings when they could, but there were still lessons to teach them. Their guidance from afar had turned the early Argentans into great warriors, and to keep them strong, they did not intervene when the occasional tragic event occurred. Strife, great storms, earthquakes, and various other natural disasters struck this population and killed many as Argentine architecture was destroyed. Despite these catastrophes, the population came together to rebuild and console those who had lost something or someone. This in turn allowed them to build back up much stronger to fight against the other issues that arose in a civilization. One of which were the brutal tribes outside of the cities that plundered and pillaged any unprotected region they could. Even though the Wraith Call had led to the rebirth of Argent and the rise of countless new species many years before, it still echoed across the land. It was said that when lesser men heard this song, it drove them to madness and allowed the strongest and most resilient of the Argenta to strengthen even more. In the face of these disasters and barbaric attacks, the strongest rose. Their resolve hardened, the fire strengthened their souls, and their will became unbreakable. For the strongest of the strong of Argenta, they formed an army, the Night Sentinels. An army that fought for and defended the wraith and safety of their species above all else. A threat could appear at any time, so the Wraith blessed the Night Sentinels with their Wraith energy. This, alongside their strong will, made them almost indestructible against the forces they came up against. Outside of the World Spear, Night Sentinels then stood guard to protect the Wraith that had gone back to sleep after they had completed their work. The population worshipped the Wraith, however, they were unsure on where they had come from. Some theorized that they had lived in the center of the planet and the crash of the spear had released them, while others were correct in the belief that they had arrived with the spear. Regardless, as they never entered the World Spear, they were unaware that this was a ship that had traveled from somewhere else in space. Moving forward an untold amount of years, the Wraith continued to sleep and allowed the Argenta people to live on. During the period now known as the Time of Grief, King Etrex was anointed as the new ruler, and in this new era, a great change came to Argent, the arrival of the Maker species. These angelic beings came from the skies and looked at the Argenta and saw just how far they had come. After they introduced themselves, they told the story of where they had come from and what they could offer. The Maker came from the realm of Urdak. This realm went by many names in other cultures: Heaven, the eternal resting place, and the home of God, just to name a few. They held the power and technology to move through space and time, where they held dominion over many worlds and dimensions. They were ancient, powerful beings invulnerable to the weapons of the Argenta, and they were here to help. If the population of Argent worshipped them, the Maker would in return give them new knowledge, order, technology, safety, power, and even the ability for their souls to live on eternally in the heavenly realm of Urdak after their physical form gave up. Although the Wraith had granted the Argenta many gifts and power to grow as a species and civilization, their distance and refusal to stop the natural disasters and various other issues that plagued the Argenta made this offer very tempting. To help his people, King Etrex accepted the offer of the Maker, and as such, many turned their backs on the Wraith and adopted the holy doctrine of the Maker as they worshipped them in their temples. A new age began on Argent as the Wraith slept. An age of warmth and spiritual prosperity flourished as the population said goodbye to the harsh, unforgiving, and uncertain future under the Wraith. However, the Night Sentinel, while they had accepted the Maker as their new gods, still continued their tribute and service to the Wraith. For some, this was seen as a betrayal to the Wraith species, while for others, this was the best direction the Argentans could have gone in for a better future. Over the ages, the Wraith slept as the Order of Deg worked alongside the Maker to lead the species. The Argentans grew and used Maker technology to build advanced spaceships to explore new planets under the banner of the Maker to spread their word. Each planet liberated added increased security to Argent as a new potential threat was removed before it could even grow. However, in a different dimension, a new threat was rising, and the Khanmaker, the leader of the species, was aware of it. In the 4th Age, during the reign of King Novik, this threat came to Argent, and it was nothing like they had faced before. As portals opened across the planet, waves of demonic entities flooded from the dimension of hell onto this prosperous land. This was the start of the Unholy Wars. In this chaos, the Knight Sentinels stepped in and attempted to protect the main cities such as Taris Nabad and Sentinel Prime, but constant waves of demons overwhelmed even them. The planet suffered huge casualties right from the beginning. To their luck, just before the demons had discovered Argent, an outlander was found just outside the city walls of Sentinel Prime. He had fought with these entities before, and he was a skilled warrior. This earned him a spot in the Knight Sentinels. Even with the Doomgeist's strength and combat ability, the Knight Sentinels barely managed to keep the demons at bay. However, behind the scenes, sinister actions were being performed. The Khanmaker and Order of Daig sought to understand the power of the demonic invaders, and upon study, they learned that they used a power source that they dubbed Hell Essence. This came from the torture and torment of the poor souls sent to hell. The Khanmaker wanted to not only win this war, but also use a power source to prolong the lives of the Maker. So she tasked those around her to increase the power of Hell Essence. In secret, they soon learned that if Hell Essence was combined with the power of the Wraith, it formed an incredibly substantial power source. This was enough to power the weaponry for the war, and to help the Maker species live longer. As this had been discovered on Argent, they named this energy source Argent Energy. The Wraith had helped this planet and its population thrive. Their essence, or magic, was essentially a force of good. It naturally spread seeds of life and power into the environment. The Khanmaker had combined this with an energy of a completely opposite nature, cruel, torturous, and death. For those that accepted this new form of energy, they discovered that they also too were gifted with longer lives, immunity to illness, and various other benefits. Despite this, the Knight Sentinels felt that something was off about this miraculous new discovery and refused to participate in it. The Khanmaker came to rely on Argent Energy, but she soon discovered that she needed to create a fresh supply of both Wraith Essence and Hell Essence to continue its production. To combat this, she ordered for the construction of secret factories in Hell to harvest Hell Essence. These factories essentially tormented and tortured the souls of the fallen Argenta that had fought in the war. On the battlefield, Commander Valen of the Knight Sentinels watched as his son fell to the demons. In his grief, he was plagued by visions of the torment of his son, and this broke him. In this vulnerable state, Daig Grav of the Order of Daig came to him under the orders of the Khanmaker. He confirmed that his son was in fact being tortured, but there was something he could do to save him. All he had to do were two things. The first, offer the key to the Sepulchre of Elements, and secondly, open the vault of the slumbering wraiths. Desperate to save his son, he agreed and allowed the Khanmaker access to the wraiths. Following this, the Elemental Wraiths were taken and imprisoned within Hell. Here, they were corrupted as their essence was extracted as they lay helpless, unable to free themselves. All of this in secret, but this secret did not last for too long. Despite this new energy source, the unholy wars continued. On a trip to Hell to fight the demons within, a group of Knight Sentinels discovered one of the factories that the Khanmaker had set up, and they learned of the dark secrets of what had happened to the souls of the lost and their ancient wraiths. They quickly returned to Argent and explained to the masses of what they had found. This information split the population and a civil war began. On one side, they refused to believe that the Maker had built factories that relied on the torture of the fallen. They were here to help and protect them. On the other side, they sided with the Night Sentinels and returned to the worship of the Wraith. Regardless of the civil war, the unholy wars still raged on and the Sentinels still went out to protect the whole population. However, they still came up with a plan. The Night Sentinels needed to achieve 2 feats to bring down the Khanmaker and her hold of Argent. The first stage of their plan required them to re-enter Hell and destroy the Soul Spire. If they could do this, it would destroy the energy connection from the factories. If they could achieve this, their next task would be to enter the World Spear and wake up the rest of the sleeping Wraiths so that they could help them in their time of need. Unfortunately, they failed on the first step of this mission. The Night Sentinels approached the Order of Deg and asked for their help. Unknown to them, the priest had secretly worked with the Khanmaker to create the factories. When the Sentinels revealed their plan to them, the priest feigned cooperation and offered them access to Hell. As the Night Sentinels entered the portal, they discovered that they had been tricked by the priests and were scattered across the twisted landscape. One by one, they were picked off by swarms of demons until just one of them, the Outlander, lived. He put the fear into the demons as he wiped them out. That was until he was trapped inside of a sarcophagus, and he could do no harm to the demons, and the demons could do no harm to him. For an untold number of years, the essence of the Wraith was extracted from them as they lay trapped in Hell. This demonic war proceeded to tear Argent apart as whole regions of the planet were consumed by Hell. Without the Night Sentinel, those who continued to worship the Wraith fell. Soon, the lands filled with pain and the population dropped. It was as if those early years of the planet had come back. Those who survived moved to the isolated regions of the planet and attempted to start a new life. Over in Hell, the well of energy remained active and pushed through the terrible power of Argent energy as the Wraith lay there in torment. Many years later, over in the Milky Way galaxy on Mars, the Outlander that had become a Night Sentinel woke up to find himself in yet another war with the demonic entities of Hell. Over the next few hours, he learned that he had been saved from his fate in Hell by a human company, the UAC. The Doomslayer still wanted revenge on those that had betrayed himself, the Wraith, and the Night Sentinels, and with the help of Dr. Samuel Hayden, the Slayer re-entered Hell and discovered the Well, a heinous device created by the Khanmaker in which it absorbed the power from the Wraith. For each Wraith he found, he severed their connection from this power source and closed down the well, and with it, the Maker's awful power source. Even through this, the death and torture of the rest of their kind did not wake the Elemental Wraith in stasis. The Doomslayer had done them a great service, and the majority of the species was still completely unaware. The Elemental Wraith species had travelled across space for an unknown reason. Regardless of whether they had planned to land on Argent or if they had simply crashed, these almost godlike beings made a great change to a planet and, through their actions, brought forth a prominent civilization, the Argenta, and one of the strongest armies in the universe, the Night Sentinels. As he continued his journey, the Doomslayer returned to Argent once again and was granted worthy by the gatekeepers of the World Spear to enter. From this, he acquired a piece of the spear itself in order to power an ancient gateway created by the Father, another powerful being. He had, in a way, repeated what the old shamans of Argent had done many years before, in which they had sought power and brought it back to their tribes. As for the Wraith, after this point, it is unknown what happened to them. Did they continue to sleep, or did they eventually wake up from their long slumber to discover the devastation that had occurred in their absence? Following the later actions of the Doomslayer, when they did eventually wake up, they would have no Heavenly Father, no Devil, and no dominant angelic maker left, leaving them pretty much the last known powerful creatures in the universe. The best part about putting these lore videos together is the research it takes to find those tiny details that make a huge difference to the topic and the story that surrounds them. Doom is an extremely complicated topic when it comes to its lore, as most of the information is really hidden or confusing in the codex entries. I do not make these videos as often as the other games I cover, but I must say that they may be my favourite. Doom lore videos are like a jigsaw puzzle. While you have all of the lore scattered around, the hard part is putting them into a chronological timeline and even checking if the codex entries are actually telling the truth. All of these smaller lore videos are also leading up to a huge timeline at some point. The Wraith species had a huge impact on the Doom timeline. Without them, the Argenta people just wouldn't exist. Therefore, the Maker species could not have come to Argent, Argent energy would not have been created, and as a result, humanity would not have discovered the Argent fracture on Mars. This means that the events of Doom 2016 may never have happened. One piece of the puzzle in this universe unravels everything. The Doomslayer would never have become the Doomslayer because he would not have met the Seraphim. There are so many tiny plot points I could go over, but I think I've made my case. The Wraith are one of the most important unknown creatures in the Doom series. That was everything I wanted to cover this week. You know the drill by now. If you enjoyed the video, hit that big red button. Like, share, dislike, and comment on your thoughts on whether you liked it or disliked it. Any engagement is amazing. I'd finally like to thank my gold tier patrons and channel members: Jonas, Lewis, Queen Arby, Fluffy the Dragon, Chicken Guy 791, Ruben Mendoza, Mossflit, Duke, Toadnut, Oren X, Azu, Karatana, AJ, Verona, Comfy, and BG Games. What did you think of this lore? Did you pay much attention to the Wraith when you played through the games? And what would you like me to cover next? This is where our story ends. Check back next week for a new one.